Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. I am very excited to have Classic Fruit Company with us today to delve into the world of melons. I know I learned a lot when they first approached us with their presentation, so I'm really excited for all of you to learn more about melons, more about them as a company. And so, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Tara.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, and if someone can confirm they can see everything okay. Perfect. Good morning, everyone, or good early afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really, really excited to walk you through a little bit about our operations and teach you more about the commodity in general. And thank you so much to ProAct also for giving us this opportunity. We're thrilled to present to you all. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tara Monreal. I'm the marketing director here, and I'm joined with Tom Ferguson and Garrett Patricio, who can introduce themselves when I pass it on to them. But one note we wanted to share is if you have any questions at all throughout the presentation, please feel free to stop and ask them. We have a lot of interesting information in this presentation, so we would love to answer any questions you have. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to the guys to go ahead and kick us off.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Ferguson, and I'm the Vice President of Sales at Classic Fruit, as well as one of the founding partners. We appreciate the invitation to provide this presentation today to give you more insight on our company, or maybe introduce ourselves to you for the first time. Our relationship with ProAct dates back actually over 30 years, and we've always valued that partnership tremendously. Um, Okay, look at this first slide that Tara has put up here, just the cover slide. For it to say Classic Fruit celebrating 20 years, it's hard to believe. Time moves by so quickly, and it's crazy to recall how we got from 2006 to now. When I think about where Classic Fruit was in October of 2006, we started with only 5 employees. Our group had previously worked together at another melon company and came into this new venture with an objective to handle the marketing for independent melon growers from Central America. Uh, we had zero interest in borrowing the millions of dollars that would be required to invest in a farming operation in a foreign country, but that thought process would quickly change. After 3 years, many of those independent growers were not able to survive the ever-changing landscape of growing and exporting melons. We were forced to quickly reevaluate our position and invested in a small ranch and packing shed, which produced just over 400,000 cartons that first season. Within 2 years, a larger packing shed became available to us, and we were now up to over 2 million cartons by that year. And then between 2014 and 2019, 2 additional ranches were strategically created in other parts of Guatemala. Today, those farms produce almost 7 million cartons of cantaloupe, honeydew, and seedless watermelons, while seasonally employing close to 1,200 employees. In 2017, Classic Fruit became directly involved in domestic melons by partnering with a California shipper, allowing us to ship Classic Fruit labeled during the summer months for the first time. By 2022, we were invited to join forces with the most premier grower shipper in California, which was Westside Produce. The following year, we formally created a melon alliance with Westside, which, with production in Guatemala, California, and Arizona, created the only 52-week melon program in the industry. This alliance allowed us to be the first melon shipper to offer year-round supply to our customers, which totaled over 12 million cartons. Just last month, Classic Fruit and Westside officially finalized a merger to bring these two leading companies together as one, and we are very excited in the direction we are heading. We could not have gotten to this point if not for the hard work of our great team members, loyal customer partnerships, and of course, some luck, which is always welcome in our industry. We look forward to what the next 20 years will bring for sure. Okay, so that's my quick overview. Apologize for the script, but didn't want to miss out on anything there. But anyway, I'll pass back over to Tara, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, awesome. So, moving on with the presentation, I'm actually going to pass it on to Garrett, who's going to walk us a little bit more about our merger, and then our offshore operations.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Garrett Patricio. I'm the president of Westside Produce and happily aligned now with Classic Fruit. This was sort of a dream of mine and fortunate that the partners at Classic kind of shared that vision of one year-round melon company. So Tara, go right ahead. As Tom mentioned, we grow in Guatemala about 6 months out of the year. We also grow in California and Arizona. The Arizona season is really our fringe months, probably our most challenging times. It's early spring, May and June, and then again in the fall in October and November. In between, from July through October, we're in California, primarily the Central Valley or the West Side area. We'll start with offshore operations, give you a little bit of an overview. You can see from this slide, it's nice aerial drone footage. You have to create your own water, reservoirs in Guatemala, wells, things of that nature. You can kind of see the reservoir that was created. One of these large ranches that we have, Tom mentioned, we have 3 different ranches in various geographic locations across the country. And we do that primarily because of rain, weather, environmental conditions are different over that 6-month period. So I think we've got another slide here with some of the areas that we're at. So classic operations originated in Zacapa, which is in the on the bottom left of your screen. It's a major melon growing region and has been for quite some time. We also have an operation out in Retalileo and then Chicamilla in the southwestern area of the country. Most of the watermelons are grown in the southwest of the country. In the Zacapa region, we have 2 packing sheds, one actually in Jicaro and one in Zacapa. They're primarily strategic. Some of the roads in Guatemala aren't the best, and a 10-mile drive can take you up to an hour, depending on the time of day and the traffic on some of those roads. So those packing sheds are located strategically within areas of where our ranches are. So as Tom kind of mentioned, we've got about 1,200 manzanas in Zacapa, 1,200 manzanas in Jicaro, and the same in Retalileo. So everything we do in Guatemala is as good as it gets. It's first class, from ground preparation all the way through to conveyance, transportation, and shipment. In the upper right slide, you can see we prepare all of the ground in advance. We lay down plastic. Everything's grown on drip irrigation. So we make sure that plastic is there because of the weather and humidity. Oftentimes we get some rain or heavy humidity, and those melons can be, if they were placed on soil, you'd see a lot of ground spotting and a lot of damage from bacteria and other factors. So everything is grown on plastic. We actually put trays on top of the plastic to set the melons up off the plastic itself. We have another slide later on, and we can review that. On the left-hand side of the screen, sorry, go back one, Tara. On the left-hand side of the screen, we protect all of the plants from insects and other damage during growth, right up and until they bloom. So from an early stage, they'll be placed under a hoop. This is called agribon, and we'll later remove that agribon. You can see that in a further slide. And again, I know Tara mentioned it, but please, if there's any questions, feel free to chime in. I know Elizabeth will share those questions if they come from the group. So everything we do is transplanted. We've got 7 greenhouses on one site. The greenhouse operation is really cool. I've been able to spend some time there on my last few visits. And on the upper left photo, you can see that's germination. That probably occurs in 1 to 3 days. You start to see little plants popping out. Those plants will be staged in the greenhouse for up to 17 days. Our typical timing for transplanting is between 15 and 18 days. Optimal really is somewhere in that 17, 18 days, but sometimes for space constraints, we've got to keep moving. Obviously, Tom said we've got about 7 million packages in Guatemala. So the turn is probably our biggest issue, making sure they're in there at least 15 days and hopefully up to 18. In the lower or the up right-hand side of the screen, you can see That's about the timing at which melons are removed and planted. The next screen kind of shows a transplant video, I believe. Tara? Yeah, so this is our transplanting crews. Everything's done by hand. A hole is punched, the transplant plug is inserted, and you can see in the right-hand photo one true leaf. And that one true leaf is sort of the start of growth. Up and until that point, the plant isn't really moving. There is a drip line inserted below that plastic, and that ensures proper irrigation all the way through, and uniform irrigation, because as you could imagine, some of these fields in Guatemala aren't the flattest, aren't the straightest. So you've got some hillsides and some other topographical issues that we have to deal with. As we showed you in the first slide, this is the agribon, and it's being removed on the field. So this is somewhere between 20 and 24 days after the transplanting. So the plant has been in growth. It's just now starting to bloom. In order for those flowers to be pollinated, we have to remove the agribon. We will then put the bees in the field. The flowers will be pollinated, the fruit will start to set, and we'll begin our journey to harvest. I mentioned the little trays that we use in the left-hand corner. You can see the tray underneath the melon. We've got another slide up ahead that shows a video of the ladies and gentlemen plugging those trays underneath every melon. It's actually really quick. It's fast, but it is very labor intensive. Fortunately, in Guatemala, we have abundant labor and lots of ability to get all of those melons under a tray. On the right-hand side of the screen, we use a sun protector called Diomita, and that sun protector, we use a brush to basically brush it across the top of the plant. All of these melons have already been cut from the plant. In the next slide, you'll see a video of harvest. So we go through with cutters, they cut the fruit, they kind of stack the fruit, and then they'll come through and place that fruit in the back of a trailer. But that sun protector is really to make sure there are no external blemishes. The sun can do a lot of damage if you don't have proper vegetative growth over the top, and this just ensures that we prevent any blemishes and sunburning. So here's a video of harvest. You can see them all lined out there. The cutters have already been through. This is the harvest crew coming through. Those trailers are padded, so they have padded trailers. They insert the melons into the trailer. We fill up a trailer, and it moves anywhere from 2 to 5 miles down the road to the packing shed. You can kind of see in the background there, we've got a couple of crews working. And most important here, because these trailers are moving down the road, we make sure that they're covered. So you've got covers over the top. Also prevents further sun damage. We're not quite sure. Sometimes they may sit out in the sun for 30 minutes up to 2 hours waiting to be offloaded at the facility. So again, this is harvest. We can move to the next slide, which comes to our first true and false question. Tara, you doing these?
Sure, why not? So true or false, melons continue to ripen off the vine.
Elizabeth has a poll if you want to use the poll.
Yeah. I think most people are saying true.
Sadly, that is not true. Melons are at their peak maturity and ripeness when they are picked. So melons did for many years emit ethylene, and ethylene was just what caused breakdown in the melons. The actual sugar content and bricks, the eating characteristics and that flavor, it's at its optimum once that fruit is picked. So again, it's in our best interests and your best interest to make sure we maintain that cold chain, make sure we eat them as quickly as possible, and don't leave them on your counter because they're not going to get any better with time. So this is a few little pictures from our facilities in Guatemala. So because of that diomita, the sun protectant, because of the climate, because of the weather conditions we have in Guatemala, we are forced to wash our melons. There's lots of different theories and thoughts in terms of food safety and whether washing is appropriate. In certain climatic conditions, you have no choice. And Guatemala is one of those that we want to make sure we're washing every melon. So once they're transported in that trailer, they go to a facility, they're put in a dump tank. That dump tank quickly pushes melons through the wash water. We have chlorine, we have lots of disinfectants that we use along the way, including peracetic acid and a further spray. Once they move through that dump tank, they're not in there more than probably 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes at most. They move up a conveyor. They have a secondary peracetic acid spray. They're sized, they're sorted, and then they're packed. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see one of our packing lines. It's actually split down the middle, and there's packers on either side. Once they're packed, they're put into forced air cooling. Once they're cooled, they're transported. So we ship out of two different ports in Guatemala, the eastern port and the western port, and that allows us to get into both the East Coast and the West Coast. You can see these are some of our inbound ports of entry. So we've got Guayanimi and LA on the west. We've got Houston in the center of the country. We have two ports in Florida, Miami and the Everglades. And we've got Wilmington, Gloucester, and Philadelphia up in the Northeast. Really what is nice about each of these ports, they're in locations that are central to our receiving areas. And we try to align customers closest to those various ports so we can reduce freight and other kind of challenges along the supply chain. We're going to transition into domestic operations. So we talked a little bit about the shed facility and the need to wash. For more than 30 years in California and Arizona, most of the growers have been field packing all of their product. Again, we don't get rain, we don't get a lot of weather related issues, so it allows us to field pack everything. You can see this is one of our field pack machines. The crews are walking through the field, putting those melons up on a packing table. From that packing table, they're being placed directly into boxes. Over 30 years of food safety research has said if you have the ability to field pack, it's probably the safest way to pack melons because they aren't commingled and they aren't placed in wash water. So this has been our standard practice in California since 1993. In California, there's two major growing regions, the southern desert area, Imperial Valley, Blythe, El Centro, Holtville, and then the west, what we've referred to as the west side. 75% of the cantaloupes domestically are grown in California, which is a huge number. A lot of them are grown throughout the Central Valley region, but in those early spring months and late fall months, they're grown down in the southern desert areas because it's much warmer. Field prep is very important. You can see in the slide to the right or the photo to the right, that's an irrigation method, which is we put about 6 inches of water on those melons. This field is actually prepared for planting in what's called a mid-bed trench. So we build a trench, we place the seeds in that trench. Different from Guatemala, we direct seed everything in California and Arizona. We do not transplant. Primarily because our weather is much hotter, faster. Those transplants can be damaged and they don't set a good enough taproot. If you had cooler conditions, you can potentially transplant melons. But for the most part, I'd say upwards of 90% of cantaloupes and honeydews are direct seeded in California and Arizona.
Our next true and false. So, melons require significant amounts of water to grow.
I think the majority says true.
I'm sorry, but again, this is false. Even though watermelon has water in its name, most melons require very little water to grow. It's a great desert crop. That's why they're grown so heavily in California and Arizona. Depending on your growing method and your irrigation method, whether you're applying water through furrow or drip irrigation, you can use as little as 16 inches of water to grow a melon crop. And when it comes to California crops in particular, where water is a challenge in general, it's one of the lowest water users, which is really beneficial during times of drought. We have used growers in historically very strong water districts throughout California, so we anticipate we will continue to have a very abundant supply. We made this transition more than 20 years ago in anticipation of some of the weather and drought-related events that occur in the state, making sure that we could ensure a crop every year. There are areas of the state where you may go from several thousand acres of melons to several hundred. So it can be very volatile when you hear about droughts, when you hear about water issues. Just know that melons don't use a lot. They're a great drought crop. And we do grow in areas where we have the ability to have water year round. So this is a planting video. I talked a little bit about direct seed. The rolling video on the right is a planter. It's creating a very narrow seed bed trench. The seed is dropped in and it's closed up after. You can see in the left video, the planter working. Like I said, it creates a trench, a seed is dropped in. We actually have lots of technology built into these planters in the last several years. We've incorporated monitors. The seed drop is approximately 14 to 16 inches, depending on the timing, and it's very uniform. This monitor shows us exactly how far our spacing was throughout the field. It shows areas if we aren't getting optimal spacing or if there's a problem with pressure. It can alert us very quickly. So it ensures that we don't encounter a problem with planting early on. Again, it's just adopting technology. I can actually sit at my desk and watch the planting in a field, several hundred miles away if I wanted to. You also see, one of our growers there digging in the soil, checking to make sure that the seed spacing's right, checking the moisture. There's lots of things that impact melon growing. But ultimately, you hope to get to a stand like you see on the left. You've got two cotyledons, one true leaf, and then pushing a second true leaf in the far left photo. In the middle photo, that's when you start to get to bloom. You see little flowers setting. That flower needs to be pollinated by a bee. You can see the bee pollinating a flower on the right-hand side. And in that middle picture, about the size of a thumbnail, is the start of a little melon. Those melons go from really a bloom to a full harvested melon in about 55, 60 days, depending on the time and the weather. The fastest you can typically see a melon plant from bloom to harvest is 50, but typically not longer than 60 once it's pollinated. These are just some stages of growth. And this is really probably week by week. If you wanted to look at it on a week by week basis, you go from picture number 1, which is right about bloom timing, to picture number 2, about a week to 10 days later, picture number 3, about a week to 10 days later, picture number 4, we're actually there in the field with the harvest machines.
Our next true and false. Melons are related to the cucumber family.
I have faith. I think you guys can get this one.
Oh, you're on mute, Elizabeth.
Most people are saying true.
Yay! Yeah, melons are cucurbits. So I'm happy to see you guys got that one right. Very closely related to the cucumber family. I mentioned sort of the stages of growth, and this sort of shows it. I like to use this This is a photo I have in my office, and it's a visual representation of when I get a call from somebody or a buyer's asking, hey, are you going to have my size 12s or my size 9s or jumbo 9s available, next month? Well, this is what happens over the course of 6 weeks. And in 6 weeks, you go from a flower to a melon. It's pretty difficult to tell you, what size that piece of fruit is going to be because of all of the changing weather conditions. It gets hot, it stays cool, melons will continue to grow, otherwise they're pushed. So, it creates some challenges for us and Tom, particularly on the sales desk, trying to answer these questions. In most cases, we've got years of experience with certain varieties. We'll talk about some varieties later, but we sort of know where these varieties slot, and there's typically a range of some sizes, but there are periods when everything is huge or everything is small. And sometimes that's hard to tell a month out. We get a lot smarter as we get closer to harvest. And within 2 weeks, we have a good idea of where that fruit will wind up. This is just a quick video of the field pack process. I discussed it initially. There's 7 beds that we cover with 7 pickers. We typically have 5 packers on top of the machine packing fruit. We've got people setting stickers. We've got people setting off and pushing it up to the loading table. And then you can see it's palletized on that trailer right there in the field by size. And it's typically never touched again. So we like to say, in terms of food safety, one hand picks it, one hand packs it, and then it's in a box and on its way to a customer. These are our cold storage videos. So on the right, we're receiving product coming in. It goes directly from the trailer coming in to a forced air tunnel. It typically stays in that forced air tunnel for somewhere between 4 and 6 hours, depending on its incoming temperature. If it comes in at 60 to 70 degrees, it usually takes 3.5 to 4 hours. If it comes in at 95 or 100 degrees, it usually takes closer to 6 hours. You can see those tunnels, and we make sure we meet optimal temperatures. So cantaloupes, we like to see around 36 to 38 degrees. Honeydews, 45 to 50 degrees. You can damage that fruit with too cold a temperature, mostly honeydews and watermelons, not necessarily cantaloupes. So we like to keep them separate in different rooms if possible. And when they travel on a truck together, we like to blend that temperature somewhere in the low 40 range. So these are our growing regions in the west. You've got Yuma, Arizona, Huron, Los Banos, Dos Palace, and Firebaugh on the west side. We also have some acreage in Holtville in the lower desert, just about 60 miles west of Yuma. We like to go back really quick, Tara, I forgot this. We like to keep the variety of our growing regions because it eliminates some of the risks involved. Like right now in Yuma, there's some problems with whitefly and virus in the lower valley. In Yuma specifically, we're actually in the southern Yuma area. We're also in the Gila area, which is in North Yuma. We're out in Welton to the east, and we're in Holtville to the west. And depending upon the insect pressure or sort of other climatic conditions going on around us, it allows us to have sort of a diverse number of acres in geographically separate areas to ensure that if there is a problem in one area, we don't experience it everywhere. Continuity of supply is pretty important to us and to our customers, so I'd like to make sure we have that. This is a little testimonial from one of our growers. We've got about 15 to 20 growers in the Central Valley and Arizona area. We utilize those growers year round to make sure that we grow a consistent crop. We've grown them in the past ourselves. We rely almost exclusively upon growers because melons in the Central Valley in Arizona need to be properly rotated. In Guatemala, we're fortunate we can rotate across our own ground. We have some other abilities that we aren't able to utilize in California and Arizona because of some of the spray restrictions. Also, some of the weather patterns. It gets cool in certain areas earlier. We don't have the same consistency of weather that we do in Guatemala.
My name is Derek Azevedo. I'm with Bowles Farming Company. I'm the Executive Vice President and COO. I've been with Bowles for a little over 7 years, and I know that, Bowles had been growing cantaloupes for Westside for, much, much longer than that. When you talk about successful partnerships, you really need to be aligned at your core and as it relates to values. And so at Bowles and at Westside, we start with the product first. When we're having our team meetings, when I'm with my supervisors, the shining star is when we're trying to make a decision on what to do, it's what's right for the crop first. And none of the stuff we do matters if consumers don't love what we're growing, don't love the quality. We don't lead with flavor. We don't protect our soil and our employees and follow all the rules and all that stuff all the way along the line. And so having customers and farming partners that align with those values is really important, and that's really what the foundation of our partnership.
So just a little testimonial. Most of our growers have been with us a long time, 20 to 30 years. I think our newest grower has been with us about 4 or 5 years. But coincidentally, they grew for us many years ago too. So these things typically happen in waves, and based on the area, the climate, the other crops that are around, it's very important that we have proper rotation. So if we can't maintain proper rotation with a grower and stay on their ranch, we don't really want to be involved. So rotation is really critical for us. We like to see 3 to 4 years in between a melon crop. So if you're growing upwards of 4,000 acres, you really need 12,000 or 15,000 acres to be able to grow them yourselves, which is why we've, for the most part, relied upon growers in our area. So food safety and sustainability, this is obviously near and dear to our hearts and important to our customers. So we kind of wanted to highlight that a bit. We've got a number of different certifications. Terry, you can go on to the next slide. So this is actually on the offshore. We can talk about sustainability. So you can play this video first.
After leaving our fields, the product is taken to our packing facilities, which comply with all the strictest standards of food safety. Food safety tests are run throughout the process in our lab to guarantee our commitment. The melons undergo a thorough washing process where they are cleaned properly. Then our well-trained collaborators select only but the best to make it to the end and goes through 3 steps of selection. Quality control are also part of this process. Our premium product is then packed and stacked to continue its journey. At the palletizing, a strict control continues. Every product that is already packed is marked to meet food safety requirements and traceability. Product is stored in a cool room to preserve freshness within our facilities in order to start their journey using a fully integrated system of land and sea transportation, delivering quality and safe products to our customers' table. Our Global Gap and Primus certification guarantee our products are produced, prepared, packaged, distributed, and certified to the highest standards of food safety. From Guatemala to our customers, only the best.
So there we go. That said it all. I mean, what else could I add there that's, not in there already? We talked a little bit about certifications, and we talked about those trays. This is a video of the ladies putting trays underneath the melons. Again, that's done to prevent any contact with the soil or any damage from rain or weather events. You saw in the video some of our certifications: Global Gap, Primus GFS. We're also BASC and CTPAT certified, and most recently fair trade. So fair trade is a certification that promotes ethical sourcing, responsible farming in the area, and making sure that we're complying with improved worker conditions and overall well-being of a community. So in Guatemala, this is very important because obviously it's an area where people aren't necessarily always paid fairly or treated properly as employees. And we thought this certification was important to show our commitment not only to our customers and their requirements, but also the people that work for us every day. You know, this is really the people that get the job done, the boots on the ground, and they need to know they're important to us. So that fair trade certification was very important to us as we move forward and look ahead to the future, not in terms of what's required for us, but what's right and what's the best thing to do for our company.
And Garrett, let me add here real fast on the fair trade. There's a lot of retailers like a Costco or Whole Foods or Walmart that will pay extra on top of which that extra amount gets put into a fund that goes back to the local communities. So there is you know, there's value in there. It's not just us getting a certification and put it on the brand and everything else. There's actually funds going back to the local communities.
Which leads us to our next true or false question. California cantaloupe is the only commodity in the U.S. produce sector with a mandatory food safety program.
Any answers yet, Elizabeth?
Yeah, but it's moving to true or false very quickly. But
Okay.
I'm gonna end it here. And people said false.
That is actually true. Some of you may be aware that there is an LGMA program. The LGMA is actually voluntary. The California Cantaloupe Advisory Board um, added a mandatory component to food safety in 2012 in the wake of the Jensen Farms event in 2011. It was one of, in my opinion, the most important things we did because it requires government oversight in all of our packing operations. If you have any questions about it, you can visit the California Cantaloupe Advisory website. It includes a list of all certified handlers. You're required to go through a number of audits, including both announced and unannounced portions. The checklist right now has 135 checkpoints. It's probably far too cumbersome and big. We get complaints from USDA and CDFA all the time about how long these audits take. But, you know, in our world, food safety is critical. So I'm a huge proponent and supporter of this program and do everything I can. I'm actually the chairman of the California Cantaloupe Advisory Board, so I do everything I can to ensure this requirement stays in place. One of the most important things that we implemented in California was an increase in the BRICS standard. So most USDA BRICS requirements are a 9. We've actually set that BRICS requirement at a 12 for California cantaloupes. It's a composite, so it's a total average of the entire box. But again, that 12 BRICS sort of ensures optimal quality, optimal maturity, and hopefully the best flavor possible. Well, I think we're back to some sustainability initiatives here. In California, obviously, I talked about water usage and melons being a low water user. The left-hand photo is a drip irrigated field. So this is actually in-furrow drip. Most of our drip is buried drip, so it's actually subsurface. This is above the ground. It's actually in the furrow that runs next to the cantaloupe plant. This allows us to save water somewhere in the neighborhood of an acre foot. So it really is a valuable tool, both going forward in the future when it comes to a tight water supply, as well as the best direct method to deliver water to the crop. When you flood or furrow irrigate, you can get water up on the beds. Water causes problems with that fruit, so we really try to avoid any contact with water on the bed. At our Fireboss facility in California, We have 5 acres of solar panels. It's like 1.2 megawatts of solar. We've offset roughly 95% of our power. We did that in 2015, so it's over 10 years old now. But the life and longevity of those systems is upward of 20 or 30 years. So this has really been a valuable tool for us. Everybody asks, oh, you put in solar, what are you going to do with all those savings? Well, there aren't really savings. It's just new investments in people, technology, resources that you may not otherwise be able to do. So for us, it was critical, and it was sort of an important step, both of sustainability as well as putting us in a position where we didn't have the significant demand on the grid. So this is a little bit about different varieties that we grow. I'll start with the offshore melons first. In terms of cantaloupes, we've got 2 dominant varieties, Caribbean Gold and Don David. We also have Palo Verde and 7843. Those are 2 new varieties that we're trialing because of their resistance to virus. Usually during the second and third cycle of growing in Guatemala, we get into some virus problems, and it can really shut down your crop and reduce your yield. So we're experimenting, we're constantly trialing. In terms of honeydews, Summerdew is our primary variety, but we also use Sweet Peridot and Sweet Paradise. Large watermelons, Sierra Madre, Sierra Nevada, Delicioso. We've tried lots of different watermelons. Getting watermelons right has been a challenge for us, but I think we're on the way there. We've had our second successful season of good growth, and we're looking forward to next year as well. In terms of personal watermelons, Serpens alone and 12749. That's still, I think, quasi-experimental. That's still one we're working with and trying to see if that's going to be the next great one. We've also grown some Hamies during different periods of time. We're still working through what's the best period for Hamies. We think it's later in the second or third cycle. That's when we're having the best results with them. Homer is the Hamie of choice. And then we also have these raptor melons. They look like dinosaur eggs. Can't say dinos anymore. We're precluded. But Punto and Maya 510 are our 2 raptor varieties.
So we do have a question.
Yeah.
It says, please tell us about the difference in harvesting the loop varieties between the US and Central America areas. Talk about the slip.
Oh, so the slip is a good question. For more than 30 years, melons slipped off the vine. That slip was a harvest indicator, and I think we've got some slides coming up, and we can talk a little bit more about it. But slip melons versus cut melons, that's really what it comes down to. There were some food safety data that told us that that slip or that abscission from the plant was actually a source of internalization. So you can get pathogens, bacterias in that slip end. And so we've gone almost exclusively to cut melons. Even those varieties that may slip, we cut just because of a food safety concern. Most of those slip melons emitted ethylene and they popped off the plant. A significant number of those varieties are gone. There are still some varieties that slip off the vine. We have a few. We don't grow any of the slip varieties in Guatemala because of the wash process primarily and the risk of internalization. But in California and Arizona, we do have a few slip varieties. They're really nice to harvest because it is a true indicator of maturity. But if you have the right people picking and aiming for the right maturity in the field, you don't typically have a problem with maturity. When we go through these fields and prepare them, and these are our domestic varieties, Carameza, Sunshine, Caribbean King, Deputy, Bounty, and Hana. Sunshine, Caribbean King, and Deputy, they can all slip off the vine if you wait for them long enough. The problem with sometimes waiting too long is you get internal breakdown, and we've got maybe some slides ahead that show a little bit of internal breakdown. That's probably the most important. As you get further into maturity, you lose pressure, and you actually start to lose bricks and flavor. So optimal harvest is between a 12 and a 15 bricks. Once you get past 15, you start to see breakdown, and that breakdown is really a fermentation process. And when you eat a melon that's starting to ferment, you can tell. Some of the other varieties that we grow for honeydews are similar to the offshore summerdew, also sweet peardo, silver beauty, and silver bullet. And then on the golden honeydews that we have, Dewlicious and Boss are our two primary varieties. So this is a video about quality. You can see in this video, if you're looking for an example of the slip, it's in that bottom right corner or bottom left corner. You can see where that slip popped off the plant. And sometimes you have to force that slip. Go back, and you want to play that video, Tara?
Yeah.
See, and look for a good seed cavity, making sure it's not too loose. The pressure of the cantaloupe is nice and firm. And then for testing the sugar, I like to just cut a little spot, slice it. I cut off any of the seed cavity, and then with this piece right here, I just squeeze a little bit of juice right into the refractometer. Cover it from the sun. And that gives you your sugar levels. This one is 16.2.
So that's a little video just on quality checks. We actually go through the fields a number of times before we even get into harvest. So how do we ensure that that fruit is of the proper ripeness and maturity to go in and pack? We typically send a crew through. We will cut an entire 10-foot section, and we'll cut every melon within that 10-foot section. And if we can't average a 12 to 14 composite, we don't start harvest. And again, that's from the smallest to the biggest. We typically go through these fields at least twice, sometimes 3 times. You're looking for typically the largest fruit first, then you work down. There's also other visual indicators in terms of netting, stem end netting, and we'll talk a little bit about the blossom and split. Melons, these types of melons mature from the inside out, so they want to push their way out when they get to peak maturity. A little crack on the blossom end is not a bad thing. That typically means you're very, very close to harvest. But you're also looking for netting up the stem end. So if you want to click on that video, that talks a little bit about.
Hi, I'm Garrett from Westside Produce, and I'm here to help you learn how to pick a cantaloupe in the store. First thing we look for in harvest is the stem end of the plant, and we like to see the netting or the webbing of the cantaloupe growing up into the stem. The more webbing or netting growing up into the stem, typically the better. We also look for some sunspots or areas where that sun has impacted the fruit and it starts to scaled a bit. That's closer to maturity. In general, the webbing on the stem end should be growing up and starting to crack. You can start to see some cracking around here. That's actually a good thing. Hopefully when you get home and cut it, it's a nice bright orange.
So just a few little tricks of the trade that we thought might be helpful or important. So we talked a little bit about slip varieties versus cut varieties. This is a slide that sort of talks about the new cantaloupe versus the old cantaloupe. And some of the indicators of ripeness are not quite the same. The biggest being a smell. Those melons that emitted ethylene had a really musky or fragrant smell, and you could sort of smell them, or you could sort of, start to salivate and get that flavor sort of in your nose. Both melons have a cream color. The new melons are a slightly greener cast. So they might have a little more green on the outside. Just because they're green doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. Now, too much green is definitely bad. So you're still looking for that ropey net. Some have a slipped stem, some don't. A cracked blossom end is okay. Just make sure that crack isn't too big. Um, Intact stem is okay on these new varieties. Netting on the stem is good. So like you heard in that video, you're looking for that netting growing up the stem. The harder green or the more green that stem end, if there's no netting growing up that stem, maybe try to avoid it. Hard exterior shell is actually okay too. These were actually grown and pushed upon us growers by the retail trade primarily because they wanted something that had shelf life, something that didn't break down, something that they didn't have to dispose of. As everyone knows, food waste is very important and sort of a critical component of most of these retail partners' efforts at sustainability. So finding something that wasn't, didn't need to be thrown away after a week on the store shelves was really important. So if it had any give, if it had any softness to that fruit, we were getting a lot of product rejected. Westside Produce was actually one of the last to grow almost all slip melon varieties. When we made that change, we made it basically out of necessity. We grew them all winter long. We grew them in the spring. We grew them in the fall. And over 3 months of the summer, you suddenly provide a customer with a totally different looking melon. They're not quite sure what to do with it. Or a retailer with a totally different looking melon. So what you've got now is similar varieties that are grown all year long. And really, I ask people, don't tell me what variety to grow. Let us help choose that best variety for you. Trust us in what we do and the experience that we have in the industry to make sure we're finding that perfect melon for you. Now, if you have certain requests or you have certain ideas of what you're looking for, we're always willing to listen. Our trialing program is robust. We probably trial 50 new varieties every year, at least twice or three times during the season. We have major breeder trials where all of the major seed companies come through, evaluating not just their material, but other material as well. It's really important to us that we find the next great melon. And we know that it's only a few years away. I mean, we will continue to see evolution in the industry. We'll continue to see new seed varieties. We'll continue to see better flavor, better quality characteristics, maybe better selection criteria, or at least harvest indicators, so that a customer in a store can say, "Oh yeah, this one's ready." And that used to be the slip in, but you just gotta bear with us and trust us for a little while. These are some quality issues. So we talked about sunken areas in the left-hand photo. Stem and mold can be a problem. That's another issue with slip melons. As they slip from the vine, if they aren't picked at optimal maturity, you start to see excretion from there, and you start to see mold setting in because it's an open stem. That's something I would pay very close attention to if you're getting slip melons today, because it's often a problem. In terms of spotting, we typically see these with honeydews or golden honeydews. It's usually an environmental issue related to too much humidity. It's typically not an internal quality issue. The fruit is typically really sound, but it's a cosmetic defect that some people don't like. And then least appealing of all is a liquid seed cavity. Nobody likes a liquid seed cavity. Usually means you're a little too close to water, or you've exceeded your maturity in terms of where you want to be in picking that fruit on time. Care and handling, we talked a little bit about temperatures. Cantaloupes 36 to 41, honeydews 45 to 50, watermelons 50 to 60. Again, when they ride together, that presents a little bit of a challenge, but making sure we maintain that cold chain is really critical, because as you break cold chain, you start to see some defects in the quality of the fruit.
Awesome. I'll take over for here and we'll kind of end off the presentation with a few slides just talking about marketing strategy and branding. We kind of saw this really cool opportunity to escalate, marketing in the melon world. You don't see a lot out there. So we're really trying to change the game as far as what you see in melons in the marketing space. So we're just going to spend a few slides going over what we're doing to try to increase cantaloupe and honeydew consumption. So first I'm going to pass it on actually to Ferguson, and he's going to talk through some promotional periods.
Right. There's, you always look at opportune times to promote melons. And typically for us, the ones that you look at Memorial Day or 4th of July would seem like automatics. They're usually very challenging. Okay, Memorial Day, which is coming up this weekend, it's at the end of the offshore program and just at the beginning of Yuma, usually out of Arizona. So we typically try not to offer promotions there. Finishing on one side and starting the other, it could be a perfect disaster. 4th of July, it's the same thing, where we're finishing in Yuma towards the end of June, and California usually gets started in early July. Again, for that retailer that wants to start promoting uh, for 4th of July, they're going to load, that third or fourth week of June, and it may just be an inopportune time. So what we try and do is line up around other holidays. Easter is a big one in the spring, other springtime promotions to coincide with warmer temperatures, especially East Coast, Northeast, or the Midwest, whatever. Um, it's a driver to help the melon category. Um, Christmas is actually a very good promotional time. You have families getting together, put a fruit bowl out on the table. It usually goes off well. Mother's Day, if you're servicing an edible arrangements, that Mother's Day and Valentine's are two of the hugest promotional dates for them to put those arrangements out for deliveries. Um, but and Tara's got some slides in here with the different ways to, recipes, things like that. We did a promotion last year, a show, and we had melon, prosciutto, and mozzarella. It was a huge hit. It was very labor intensive to put together, but it went over very, very well. And we definitely encourage consumers to look at other ideas rather than just slicing and putting it into a bowl.
Yeah, if you go actually on the California Cantaloupe website, that's where all of our recipes are. And there's just a multitude of ways that you can use cantaloupe. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. In the bottom right corner, that's actually cantaloupe risotto that is paired with a steak. That's perfect for the holiday season. If you're hosting, a Super Bowl watch party or game day party, make cantaloupe ceviche or make skewers. There's so many different ways you can do it. Some of my favorite ways are actually during the summer, making popsicles by the pool, or even, back to school sandwiches, putting salami and cantaloupe in a sandwich. It might sound crazy, but I promise you, when you mesh two different flavor profiles together, it's actually very, very delicious. So I'm a bit of a data geek. My background originated in research. So um, something that I always try to do is, kind of look at the data that's out there and see how that can drive our marketing strategy. So just kind of wanted to walk you through some of the data points that we're using to influence what we're doing in the marketing space. I'm sure some of them are not foreign to any of you. So just want to run through these quickly. Number one, health first buying is the number one driver, which I'm sure you've all heard over the last few years. Social media is driving what people buy. Premium superfood demand is rising, and there's a new generation of buyers. Cantaloupe in general has historically been an older generation commodity. It's something my grandparents grew up on. I'm sure your grandparents grew up on. And for some reason along the way, it hasn't been as popular with those younger generations. So now that you have all of these new buyers coming in, we really want to change the game and try to influence them to really pick up cantaloupe and honeydews. Which leads us to, I promise this is our very last true or false question. Cantaloupe is not a superfood.
I think you were trying to trick people here.
I really was. I really was.
Yay.
Yay! That's exciting. So yeah, just giving, one of those data points, superfoods are on the rise. So a lot of people may not know this, but cantaloupe is one. It's one of the most nutritious commodities out there. It's filled with vitamins A, B, C, antioxidants, electrolytes, water, potassium. It's been linked to help decrease heart risk and heart disease. It's so nutritious. So, why aren't people picking them up in the stores? So educating people on the health benefits is, one of the number one things that we're doing. And then showcasing new ways to eat it. We actually teamed up a few years ago with a chef out of New York, and he had a cantaloupe burger on his menu in his restaurant. That patty is full cantaloupe. There is no meat in that burger. And he basically cooks it like a 2-day process. He brines it, he does everything, and he serves it. So we actually had it at an IFPA event, giving it out to people, and it was really delicious. And you pair it with all different sauces. So it's just kind of showing different ways to eat melons, having it on pizza with some prosciutto, or scooping out the seed cavity and make it into a yogurt bowl. And then having kids, be more involved and hopefully spark more interest in the commodity. So that's something that we've always been trying to do in the last few years, is really showcasing all the unique different ways to use cantaloupe in the kitchen. And then kind of what we're doing on social media. Not sure if any of you saw our April Fool's post. It kind of blew up. We had people messaging us and reaching out to us wondering if it was real. So just kind of having fun with melons too. Melons are a fun and unique commodity. So doing what we can in the social space and to kind of pique some interest. We saw that social media as a driver for buying habits. So might as well make it fun. And then also continuing to show those new generations enjoying melons, having them at a picnic with some girlfriends, or, in the kitchen with your parents, just showcasing ways, hopefully encouraging younger buyers to pick them up. But also, it's important to educate on where food comes from and the process of it. You guys probably learned a lot of information today on harvest and how we get our melons, from the fields to you. So educating that also, because people want to know where their food comes from. But, not only that, but it really builds that trust with your customers that you're doing everything that you can to give them the best commodity at the end of the day. And then lastly, we have our little Got Melons campaign that we've been working on the last few years. Just something fun, something cheeky to get interest up. So some of you may have a hat. But yeah, once again, just trying to make it more fun for consumers. And then lastly, something that we did for the first time last year, some of you may not know it, but the Allen family are actually growers of ours. They've grown melon for us for probably close to over 30 years. And so given off of Josh's MVP win, we decided to go up with the family and do a special label. So this happened last summer, particularly when we were harvesting the Allen family's fields. We offered an Allen Family Farms JA17 label. And just to give you some reference on how successful this was, melon sales in Western New York went up 125% just within 2 to 3 weeks. We had kids calling to get more melons, begging their parents to buy them. We got tagged in a photo of a young girl who snuck in her melon to the Bills game and dressed it up with eyelashes. She was just so excited. So, when you have someone like Josh Allen who kids are really resonating with and looking up to, it's another great way to get people excited about fresh produce, especially when it's something that his family directly grows. That picture on the very right is actually Josh as a toddler in their melon fields. So it really does show that, their family is doing it. And then a big part of this promotion too was we had a portion of all proceeds go back to the Children's Hospital in Buffalo, which, we're giving back to the community there. And it was really special and important to not only us, but to the family directly. And then if you look in the bottom left corner, the Bills organization actually invited us out to their annual food drive, which is called the Huddle for Hunger. I have never cut so many melons in my entire life. Our line was wrapped around the entire facility. Kids just wanting to try them. They were trying to eat them with no hands. They were begging to take home melons. So it's just another way for us to kind of connect those new generations, and people were really, really excited about it. So it was an amazing opportunity for us. All of our retail partners were really excited. They were setting up displays and holding competitions. So it was a really great way for us to, connect with some of our growers, but also just once again show us what we do and connect with a whole new generation of buyers. So this is
So
something
Tara,
that, oh, go ahead.
Tara won't tell you this, but I actually got a card from a consumer in Western New York, and there were, I think, 17 stickers. They had bought 17 melons in a 3-week period, and they put the PLU sticker in the card, all 17 stickers, to show how passionate they were about this program. The other thing Tara probably won't tell you is it did really well in Western New York, but when we sent them into Boston, I think they had a 12% decline in sales in Boston. So, football fans are passionate. So what works in Western New York may not work in Boston Metro.
And yeah, and then we just would like to wrap up our presentation with a little joke, some melon humor. Honey, do you want to get married? I'm sorry, but I can't elope. So we like to have fun in the melon world, so we figured we could end with some little humor. But yeah, thank you so much. I know we kind of talked a while, so we appreciate all your time. And if there's any last minute questions, feel free to ask them. We'd love to answer.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much, Tara, Garrett, and Tom. This was truly an eye opener for me when it came to melons. So I hope everyone walks away with a little bit more knowledge on this amazing commodity and your company. Thank you for all the attendees. Be on the lookout for next month's supplier training, and the recording will be available most likely in the next couple of days. If you have anyone from your team that couldn't make the training, they are available on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.